Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Week 1 game preview edition of Broncos Beat. I'm Alexis Perry, and I am so thrilled to be joined by James Palmer from the NFL Network, former Broncos safety Nick Ferguson, and Cecil Lammey from 104.3 The Fan. You guys, after what felt like the longest offseason of all time, I know I could speak on behalf of all of us when I say that we are absolutely thrilled. The Broncos season kicks off in just less than 2 hours as the hometown team hosts the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. The last time these two teams met, Week 6 of the 2019 season, the starting quarterbacks were Joe Flacco and Marcus Mariota. Week 1 of the 2020 season will feature the young gun Drew Lock and the 2019 Comeback Player of the Year in Ryan Tannehill. The Broncos surrounded Lock with all the tools he needs to be successful this season. So what does Drew need to show tonight in order to get off to a strong start?
I'll jump in and say successful start for Drew Lock is obviously, I think, number one, taking care of the football, and number two, making sure he makes the right decisions. I think wins and losses, obviously, that's what all this comes together and how that matters, but how he plays the position and how he solidifies the fact that he's the future of this franchise is that he protects the football, he makes plays, and at the same time puts his team in position to win. I know I'm the one, Cecil, that always says, like, let's pump the brakes, let's make sure 2021 is the year, but, like, let's get him on the right track. And I think those things are kind of the base to get that going.
Well, and James, that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because there will be mistakes. There will be a fumbled snap from under center. There will be an interception, perhaps. And what I want to see is how does Drew Lock respond after he makes those mistakes? We all know that he has confidence and he has swagger. Well, what about when the chips are down? What about when he makes a bad play? And those will happen. He's a young quarterback starting his 6th game in the NFL. We should be expecting these things, but we should also be expecting him to bounce back and to play better, to continue that swagger that he does have, even through those rough patches.
All of the things are great, but for me, what I want to see improved footwork from, Drew Lock. I mean, last season when Rich Gangarello was the offensive coordinator, that was the biggest issue. Can he adapt to playing under center, making plays from under center? A quarterback who's played in the shotgun primarily in his collegiate seasons, now can he make that transition? To me, if he can do that, now we're seeing Drew Lock progressively get better as a quarterback, and that would be a sign of success when I look at things.
Well, he might have to make that transition this week without his number one wideout in Courtland Sutton, who will be a game-time decision as he tries to work his way back from that AC sprain in his shoulder, which he suffered during practice last week. So if he is not able to play tonight, or if he's limited in some capacity, how could that impact this offense?
I look at Thursday night, right? I look at what the Houston Texans had without that security blanket of DeAndre Hopkins, and what was Deshaun Watson doing? He looked a little bit lost, in my opinion. Now, he did have a different play caller. Drew Lock's going to have a different play caller. But that safety blanket of a guy, and you guys both know this, that has some size, has the ability to win 50-50 balls, if you can go and just go, whoa, and you know you can go that direction, and you know there's a good chance he comes down with it when things aren't right, that's a great feeling to have as a quarterback. When you don't have that, right now, he'll have a lot of inexperience around him of guys playing in their first NFL games. So I do think the security and the safety feeling of the relationship he already developed with Courtland Sutton is something that as a quarterback, you would think would be something you greatly desire going into your first start of the season. Without that, and if it's limited in any capacity, you're going to have to put more on your shoulders and make more plays with guys that you somehow have more experience than with just a handful of games under your belt.
Right, and James, I'm glad you said security blanket, because we got to talk about your favorite player, Albert Okwuegbunam. Now, I think there'll be plenty of there for Jeudy. I think there'll be plenty of there for Noah Fant, who quietly had a really strong training camp. I still don't think any of us talked enough about Noah Fant, but you mentioned that chemistry with Courtland Sutton. Nick and I talk about it all the time. He's got that chemistry, but you know whose chemistry is stronger? Him and Albert O. So come through in the red zone. Do they do the work to get towards pay dirt? And again, this offense has got to score more points. It's got to put up 24 plus on the board in this season opener. Does he do that with the guy that he has even stronger chemistry with than Courtland Sutton? And that is one, Albert O.
See, it's great we're talking about Courtland Sutton, who developed a great chemistry with Drew Lock, as you just so eloquently put it, Cecil. But now that means Jeudy was a first-round draft choice by the Denver Broncos. sooner than we expected becomes the number one wide receiver. And I can see that me being around you, Cecil, is actually rubbing off because now you're
I don't know if that's a good thing.
embrace the Albert Okwuegbunam idea, because I told Cecil, I say, listen, this is going to be a season where Noah Fant is going to have more targets than Albert Okwuegbunam, but Albert Okwuegbunam, based on the relationship that he's developed from collegiate football at Missouri and here with the Broncos, he's going to have more touchdowns, because we know from a defensive standpoint, the field is reduced, so that means the defensive guys can only show for so much. But when you have a big athletic body like Albert Okwuegbunam, when that catch radius, you want to make sure that you get him involved with the offense.
Nick, I know you actually suffered this same injury when you were playing. What's it like? What is Courtland Sutton going through right now?
Well, Alexis, there's a lot of pain and discomfort that he's going to have in that AC joint. With him being a wide receiver and being required to lift his arms over his head, that is where the problem is going to be. And Coach Fangio said, well, if Courtland Sutton's going to play this week, he has to show me that he can do 10 jumping jacks. And what he mean by that, getting that hand over your head. And that is where the problem is. So playing him in this game, I wouldn't do it, because if you expose him to a contact or he falls on that shoulder again, now you lose him for the season like you did Von Miller.
Yeah, well, hopefully the other guys like Tim Patrick and Jeudy will be able to step up if Courtland Sutton can't go tonight. But speaking of Jeudy, the man who was supposed to cover him tonight, Adoree Jackson, is out with a knee injury. So with Jackson's absence tonight, does that increase your expectations for Jerry Jeudy at all?
Jerry Jeudy's debut, I have high expectations for it. I don't care who's covering him. I don't care who is out there, because of his savvy, because of his route running ability, his soft hands and concentration. This is a guy that doesn't need a lot of space to make a catch, and yet he creates a ton of space within his route. So with Jerry Jeudy, especially without Courtland Sutton, I still think that nearly 100 yards is possible for this young man. It's possible that he becomes that favorite target and becomes that number one receiver, because stepping into this league, this is no hyperbole. Jerry Jeudy has star and superstar potential in the NFL. I'd like to see that in his debut.
Well, Nick, I'd like your take on this, because this is what I get from talking to different corners around the league and what they think makes a very savvy route runner. And right, that's one of the things that's usually developed over time, and you get better at it after off season. The more people I talk to, he kind of already has that. And one of the biggest things that jumps out at me when I talk to guys is his ability to change speeds within his route, right? Lull you in one aspect, and then in another step he's gone, and kind of work his route in a variety of ways of a different step or a different speed change. And that makes things really difficult on a secondary, specifically really different on a secondary that hasn't seen you do it in that system before. So I think those unknowns, in a sense, he could have that breakout explosion game that we're waiting for in week one.
Well, he definitely could have that explosion type of game, because with Courtland Sutton, if he doesn't play, now Jerry Jeudy becomes the focal point of the offense. And Adoree Jackson not being in the game, that definitely changes things from a small standpoint. But they still have Malcolm Butler. And I expect Malcolm Butler to travel with Jerry Jeudy around the field. That eliminates some of those quick, short passes that I believe Cecil was trying to allude to, that when you watch Jerry Jeudy run in practice and you go back and watch him on film in Alabama, he was great of getting in and out of his cuts. But this is where Pat Sherman's going to have to do a great job of reducing the formation and getting those receivers in those tight two-man stack box formations. So now the receivers are running directly in the clear eyesight of Drew Lock. So now he can put the ball on the body of Jerry Jeudy and allow him to run after the catch. If they're able to do that, now we're talking about success. But I don't know if it's going to be as successful as Cecil's claiming with 100 yards. I don't know how many receivers will come in their first game, no training camp, no OTAs, no preseason, and actually came out with 100 yards. If he's able to do it, I'll applaud the effort, but I don't think that's going to happen.